Hi, this is Jamie Markinette, Senior Director, Music Insights and Industry Relations at Luminate. You're listening to the Your Morning Coffee podcast with my friends Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart. Weekly music news for the new music business.
For music business worldwide, on-demand audio streams grew 13.5% to reach 616.5 billion in the U.S., and 5 other key stats from Luminate's mid-year report.
And from Hypebot, predatory ticket resellers cost artists, confused fans millions. NITO study shows.
And from Billboard, there's a free mobile app helping teens crash the Hot 100, and it's not TikTok. What? Not TikTok? Surely there's a typo there, Jay. Well, we are going to get deep into it, and we're going to start the podcast right about now.
Stand by for transmission.
This is London calling.
Wake up! The revolution is at hand! Your morning coffee is on the air. On the air. On the air. On the air. On the air.
Standing by.
Your morning coffee, the weekly music news for the new music business. It's the highly curated, agitated, advocated, moderated, and liberated digital music information that you need to know. We are your digital music authority. And now from our studios in Hollywood, California, here's your hosts, Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart.
Brother Jay, so good to see you on a damn hot day, baby. It is
super hot.
Toasty in SoCal today.
Yes, it is.
I was, as I mentioned to you, I was out and about in your neighborhood, and it was hot. It was hot.
You're brave. Go outside.
I am brave, indeed. But what a good week, and fun to be talking about these stories. And it was fun to drop our special with Jamie Markinette from Luminate.
Yeah, and
last week.
Thanks, Jamie, for the intro to the show this week.
Yes.
He is just the best. We had such a great conversation. If you haven't heard the bonus episode, we sat down with Jamie and talked about the Luminate mid-year report, which we're going to cover a little bit more today with this music business worldwide story, but we really appreciate the fine folks over at Luminate.
For sure. And I have been using the phrase eye-popping. Some of the stuff in it was eye-popping. When we first looked at it, it's like, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Wow.
And very encouraging too. A lot of good news.
Yeah, it is. And you're going to make an appearance over at the LA College of Music this week, I think, aren't you, Jay?
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. On Monday, with my friend Jeff Mayfield, they've invited me to come over and talk a little bit about the new music business and about the data platform Viberate and some other things. Really looking forward to that on Monday, LA College of Music with Jeff Mayfield.
I think you should wear your Hogwarts professorial big tunic when you go over there for that.
Oh my gosh. Can you imagine? I love working with colleges. I work with 6 of them, and it's just the highlight of my career because these kids, as I call them, they're so much sharper than I was at that age. You know, standing on the shoulders of giants. They are entrepreneurs. They're learning. They ask great questions. Really looking forward to that. And also this last week, Mike Brandvold and I dropped episode, you ready for this? Episode number 573 of the Music Biz Weekly podcast. I don't know if I told you, but a couple of months ago, we passed 1 million downloads, which was really cool. And
my goodness.
Yeah,
Good
I've
for
been
you
doing
guys.
it with Mike for a long time. And this last week, our episode was one of our favorite episodes. And it's basically about different tools that we're using in marketing. And it evolves and changes. And we do this show like, I don't know, every 6 months or so. And we hadn't planned on recording that particular show this week, but we had a guest drop out at the last minute. And I said, hey, Mike, I've been using this new tool. Well, what do you think? And we just said, let's record about, kind of our favorite tools. So if you get a chance, listen to the brand new episode that just dropped, Music Biz Weekly Podcast, number 573. I think it's all of our favorite sort of marketing tools. And before we hit record, I wanted to mention that you and I are big fans of Bobby Owsinski. We talked about him last week on the podcast. And he's got an AI workshop this coming week that I'm attending, and I'll report back. And hopefully you can attend some of those as well.
I will as well. Yeah, for sure.
Day 1 is AI basics. That's Monday. Day 2 is AI tools. And then day 3 is next steps. And this is at 1 p.m. West Coast, 4 p.m. East Coast. And Bobby Owsinski AI workshops this week, and they're free. Go sign up.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Really looking forward to that because, like we've said, there's so many flavors of AI and people just throw out the global phrase AI. And, there's just some just remarkable and amazing tools on the recording side. And but you gotta, there's just a lot to know. And so to have a workshop like this,
you and I have a friend like Bobby who's he's already looked at like over 100 of these different platforms, services, tools, things. And so I'm really excited to dig into that with Bobby. Before we hit record, a couple of quick things. One is in Your Morning Coffee, the newsletter, I often feature one of our favorite podcast series, and that's the Song Sommelier. And it is just one of the best just series of podcasts because Keith Jopling interviews artists about their career and, how do you stay in this business as long as you have? And he's got so many great episodes. But I had a chat with Keith this last week, just telling him how much I love Song Sommelier. Let's listen into a couple of minutes of that conversation. So, Keith, thanks so much for joining me today. For those that don't know, you created the Art of Longevity podcast, and you once said that when you started the podcast that people said artists wouldn't discuss the business side of music. Talk about that a little bit and talk about the Art of Longevity.
Thanks, Jay. Thanks for having me on this conversation. It's one of the things they said. And who was they? I mean, people in the industry, people in the media side, they said two things. One, they said the artists wouldn't be able to articulate the business side very well or wouldn't want to talk about it. And also the artists don't want to talk about the past. They want to focus on, the current project or what's next. And both of those didn't turn out to be the case. They really didn't. I found artists to be very articulate about the business situation in the industry. They're at the sharp end of it, and very happy to talk about their past once they're comfortable. And that was the thing. It's all about getting them comfortable.
Yeah. Well, talk about the podcast. It's one of my favorite things to listen to. There's so many different episodes and no two are exactly alike. How did you come up with this? And tell us a little bit about, for those who haven't listened, talk about what it is.
Yeah, thank you. So the Art of Longevity is a podcast I created to hear the kind of conversation with the artist that I wanted to hear and couldn't get anywhere. I just wasn't hearing it, which was something of real perspective, something frank. Again, we talked about, going back in history, definitely covering the failures as well as the successes, so the ups and downs of their careers, the dark times, and sometimes there's been dark decades for some of these artists as well. And I wanted to hear that perspective from the artist, not just, what they're doing right now or what it was like at the peak of their career when when they were in the charts or on the wave of some music trend here, or other. But
Yeah.
everything about what's happened kind of in between, and also the more when they've gone off piste a little bit and they've been more experimental or whatever. What are their favorite phases of their career and what's been important to them? So I didn't hear it anywhere else. So I just thought, well, I'll create it. That's what podcasters do most times is create something they're not hearing anywhere else. And so I went ahead and did it. I wasn't sure, of course, probably like all people who've started a podcast, whether anyone would join me. And then, bless him, one of the first people I asked, partly because I thought they might do it, was Ollie Knights of Turin Breaks. He's the singer of the band Turin Breaks, is one of my favorite bands, and I've been following their story. And I asked Ollie to do it, and I asked the manager of Duran Duran if I could. I thought I'll shoot for the moon, and I'll also go for someone who I think might do it. And Ollie said yes, bless him. So he was the first guest, and he was absolutely amazing. Entered into the spirit of it wholly. Duran Duran I haven't done yet, but they will do it. I've been told they'll do it, and I think they'll do it, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I think my favorite one so far is Tears for Fears, only because, I know those guys, I know the story.
Of course.
And what's interesting is you tend to ask questions and bring things out that they don't typically talk about in interviews. It sounds like two people just getting together for a drink and talking, and we get to kind of listen in. Are there any highlights over all of these episodes that you've done for you?
Well, firstly, just on that point about getting together and having a chat, that I'm glad you brought that up and that you hear it that way, because that's how I wanted it to be. It's like dropping in on a phone call, or as if we were at the bar having a beer or a cocktail or something. And by the way, there's something else I'm working on, which will involve exactly that scenario. So it's a little bit more even relaxed and laid back than The Art of Longevity. So I'm glad you brought that up. Favorite bits, there have been some favorite episodes, and they're usually with the unexpected people. So on the one hand, it's been wonderful to interview people that I consider to be my musical heroes. And that would be, indie bands like Death Cab for Cutie, a classic artist like Suzanne Vega. They're all on my favorites list, so when they agree to do it, it's wonderful, because I don't have to prep that much by way of understanding their catalog. I just need to focus on what I would always dream about asking them, and then just staying calm and not getting starstruck. But I enjoy those interviews so much. But the other side of it is, you take someone like Narina Palo, who's a UK-based singer-songwriter who, had moderate success at some point in the early 2000s, and I'm was vaguely familiar with her work. And then I've really enjoyed episodes like that because, first of all, the prep is like it's a form of the deepest form of discovery, and diving into the catalog of someone like Narina, everything she does is class. She writes real songs. They're genreless. And her story's been interesting because she had moderate success, and then she's one of those artists that forever is on the industry swings and roundabouts, like one label at a time. She's had different managers. She's now self-managed. She's been through the ringer and the ups and downs. And so when I interviewed Narina, she was terrifically articulate. She was friendly. She was willing to talk about anything, and she was super insightful. And I just loved that conversation. And there's been a bunch like that with artists that actually either pitched to come on, or their PRs or their managers pitched to come on. And I thought, well, I don't know them. Should I take the time here to get to know this artist? And it's so rewarding when I've done that.
Yeah. Thanks so much for joining us today, Keith. Keep up the great work. much success for more episodes of The Art of Longevity.
Well, I'm glad you're a fan, Jay, because I'm a fan of everything you do, and it's just great. It's affirmation, because sometimes when you do a podcast and the numbers are good, but they're not, it's not huge like a radio show or something that's front and center on one of the platforms. It's a cult podcast essentially. We do a few thousand downloads each episode, but when I hear people like you say they love it, it's important, and so it's real affirmation for doing it. So thanks for having me on, and keep doing everything you're doing.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
So great. And again, best name ever for this. It's like the song Sommelier, of course. I wish I thought of that and trademarked it, as a matter of fact, but I did not. Yeah. And good on him, man. He's such a great guy, and just he's fantastic.
Yeah.
Love listening.
And if you look at the podcast series, each one, the cover has like this unique sketch of that artist. It's just beautiful. I mean, it's just one of the best done podcasts out there. And if you don't know who Keith Jopling is, he used to be with Spotify years ago. He's with Sony Music, but he works with one of our favorite companies, Media, right? We often talk about Mark Mulligan and Tatiana Sarasano, and we follow Media very, very closely. So check out the song Sommelier. One of the best. The podcast is The Art of Longevity, and I believe he's got an episode coming up with Corey Taylor. But again, don't miss it. It is one of those things that you will fall into the rabbit hole.
It's so well worth your time. Absolutely. Hey, we also want to thank our sponsors, because every week Jay and I get to do the show, and we certainly appreciate the folks that whose shoulders we stand on. And after that big Mexican dinner last night, I'm a little heavier than I was last weekend. Wow. But hey, want to thank Hypebot. Since 2004, Hypebot has chronicled the new music industry and the trends and technologies that are changing how music is discovered, consumed, marketed, and monetized. It is edited daily by founder Bruce Houghton with help from Alana Bonilla. Hypebot and sister blog Music Think Tank are published by live music discovery and marketing platform Bands in Town.
By the way, Bands in Town was one of our favorite platforms on that episode of Music Biz Weekly.
Oh,
speaking of Bands in Town, over 74 million live music fans trust Bands in Town to get personalized concert alerts, recommendations, and messages from their favorite artists. It's a #1 artist services platform connecting over 560,000 artists with their super fans. Managers, labels, agencies, and artists access their own dashboard to manage and promote their tour dates across all platforms.
Yes, and big thanks to the Music Business Association, which creates the rooms in which the important conversations that shape our industry's future take place. We know when we work together, our industry, your business, and your people will be stronger. Our membership represents every major segment of the global music business, including labels and distributors, music streaming, retail and wholesale, publishers and pros, rights management and metadata, artist managers, tech and startups, all kinds of great stuff. Go over to musicbiz.org for more information. Big thanks to the Music Business Association, Hypebot, and Bands in Town.
Yes, sir.
Totally appreciate that.
Yeah, we do.
And of course, I get to hang out every week with that bon vivant man about town, the guy with the Hogwarts big tunic on.
Wow.
My good friend, Mr. Jay Gilbert. He's a music industry consultant. He's a curator of the weekly Your Morning Coffee newsletter and a former executive with Universal, Sony, and Warner Music Groups.
Yes, sir. And this gentleman across from me is longtime host of Sound and Vision Radio, Mike Etchart, formerly of SST Records, Warner Music, Capitol EMI, and Universal Music Groups. And you and I, before we hit record, we were talking about this really cool video we saw, and I added it to Your Morning Coffee. So it's in there under the headline, Playlistification. I'm trying to say that 3 times fast. Playlistification and the crushing ubiquity of cheap music. And we saw this on Hypebot, and it is phenomenal. So don't miss this video. And it says, according to Luminate, our friends at Luminate, 42% of tracks, of 66 million tracks on music services get less than 10 streams, and 24% have no streams at all. Quote, there's too much new music, and most of it sucks, end quote.
Unbelievable. And this is, Venus Theory is his I don't know, professional name, but his real name is Cameron. Sound designer, musician, and YouTuber based outside of Nashville. Super great. And I was not familiar with this guy at all. And I was riveted when I was watching it. It's like, oh my God, this guy's fantastic. So I look forward to going back to his.
He's really
to his
snarky, funny, and well-informed. And I think you'll really enjoy the video. I went back and looked at a couple of other videos he'd done. They're super pro, super well done. So Cameron, aka Venus Theory, you got a couple of new fans here. Nicely done on that video.
Well, and as we were saying, it was so beautifully lit and so beautifully edited, and we notice those things when people take the time, and it's awesome. So, well, Jay, I say we jump into the stories. The first from Music Business Worldwide: on-demand audio streams grew 13.5% to reach 616.5 billion in the U.S. And 5 other key stats from Luminate's mid-year report.
Yeah, and fans of this show will, you probably heard the interview that we talked about with Jamie Markinette from Luminate, and so all these facts and figures. But I loved this piece because it's nice to see what other people are taking from this data, right?
Yes.
They say that data is like a lamppost. You can use it to illuminate, right? Or you can use it to lean on. And a lot of people use it to lean on. They say, see what that says? That's what I was saying. Well, this piece was written by Murray Stassen, someone who we think very highly of Murray Stassen over at Music Business Worldwide, and we cover a lot of his work. But I really do want to go through, some of his takeaways on this, because I think it's really key. Now, we've gone through sort of all of the high level points about this report, but just to kind of recap, according to Luminate, total on-demand streams, that's audio and video, it grew almost 31% in the first half of 2023, and to reach 3.3 trillion streams. That's crazy, compared to 2.5 trillion, for the same period last year. So total on-demand audio-only streams grew almost 23% to 2 trillion. That's crazy.
Stunning, absolutely stunning. And on-demand song streams, including audio and video, grew 15% year over year to 713.5 billion streams. I mean, we're talking just crazy numbers. And I think when I got this before we interviewed Jamie, I was just riveted. I couldn't put it down. It's like, man, these numbers are unbelievable.
And they're so positive, right? You and I were talking about that, like all of the physical categories, which is, kind of the redheaded stepchild of the music industry to some people, except for vinyl. But all the physical things were up, even cassettes, which we thought was really interesting. So let's take a dive into what Murray says, are some of these key takeaways, right? The first one, catalog share of U.S. music consumption increased in the first half of the year, but only slightly. Luminate defines current as anything released in the 18 months prior to it getting streamed, downloaded, or purchased. So we talk about this all the time. After 18 months, it's considered catalog. But what Jamie pointed out when we talked to him is that even though catalog is up and it's a big part of the business, it's not like things from the 50s. It's things from the last 3 years that are really, bumping that number up. So according to Luminate's mid-year report, of the 538 million album sale equivalent, TAC, units recorded in the first half of 2023, almost 73% were registered as catalog music. That means that current music's total share of TAC, total album consumption in the U.S., in the first half of 2023 was 27.2%, or 146.8 million TAC units.
Crazy. Now, I've talked about this before. What do you think that number should that age should be for what catalog is? Because if we said, there's so much new music coming in, and it takes a lot of time for these things to develop. So it's not uncommon to see something that came out 18 months ago suddenly start to break, and it's already cataloged.
Right.
So what do you? To me, the number is like 4 years. I'd like to see that extended to like 48 months. That seems more reasonable.
I agree with you. I think 3 to 4 years. And then maybe there's another category for deep catalog for things that are decades old, maybe something like Running Up That Hill when it had that moment, things like that. But I think it's a little bit confusing when you see that catalog is doing so well, but then you look in catalog and there are things in there like K-pop and Bad Bunny and Billie Eilish and, Doja Cat and things like that. I mean, is that really catalog? Well, technically it's not being worked as a new release. So it's over 18 months, but I would love to see a little bit different kind of designation there.
Well, and these designations go back decades to a time when the industry was so different. Another point that Murray brings up, the volume of new track uploads to DSPs may have hit a peak just in this last quarter one. As he says, in May, we, meaning Music Business Worldwide, reported there were about 120,000 new tracks hitting music streaming services each day, which was citing Luminate data that an average of that many ISRCs were being added to music streaming services across audio and video platforms per day in Q1 of 2023. Mm-hmm. That figure works out to about a little over 10 million new tracks uploaded to the likes of these distributors and other music streaming services for the first 3 months of the year, according to Luminate. They pointed out that if the number of average daily new track uploads continues at the same rate of 120,000 per day for the rest of the year, by the end of 2023, over 43 million tracks will have been uploaded to Spotify.
Okay, well, let me interject here because this is where I sort of I disagree with some of these because they just said 43 million new tracks. These are not tracks, right? What this is it's audio and video. The reason this number is so high is because it includes SoundCloud and YouTube. And so these are audio and video, right? And they're ISRC codes. That's the unique identifier on the master side. So it's not unusual for a track to have 4, 5, 6, 10 ISRCs, meaning different versions of that. If you're looking at just songs, and that's the problem here, is sometimes we get confused with these ISRCs that are being uploaded and what are the songs. The number's about half that. So Glenn Peoples did this really cool article a while back about Spotify, it's about half that if you're just looking at ISRCs on the audio side. Now, when you include SoundCloud and YouTube, it's almost double that. So, Murray's not wrong. And this analysis with Luminate is not wrong, but you kind of have to read the fine print because what happens is people read this and they go, oh, well, there's 112,000 tracks up, like individual different tracks being uploaded on average every day. And that's really not what's happening.
Yeah. The whole ISRC thing it leads to confusion potentially. Yeah. Because like you said, there can be, the same song can have a number of different ISRCs depending on lots of things, different mixes, different, all kinds of stuff.
Sure.
So, yeah, exactly. When we spoke with Jamie, this next point was one of the things that we were also fascinated with, which is the English language music is losing streaming share in the U.S. and globally.
Yeah. Yeah, that's super fascinating. And, I think a lot of it's K-pop. Bad Bunny is just a beast. It says amidst the growing popularity of non-English language, from the likes of Korea, Latin America, English language music, I can't even say it, English language music's share, say that 3 times fast, of total on-demand audio streams, it's shrinking in the United States. And you're right. Jamie brought that up to us, and it's not just in the U.S., it's in other territories as well.
Yeah, exactly. So that's kind of exciting. Another thing, number 4, regional Mexican music is seeing significant growth in the U.S. And don't forget about Afro beats.
Yeah.
And, and we, one of the things that I keep thinking about is, in our day, when we were young people, we went into a record store with a very finite budget. And, you had to make an economic decision on how much money was in your pocket. What albums do you want to buy? And you could maybe look at 4 when you could really only afford 2 or 3 and kind of make a decision. Now, because of streaming, we can be adventurous and we can look around. And I think that's one of the things that has changed dramatically is that consumers now can go anywhere and listen to anything and any language. And music listeners are very curious. And I just love that about the streaming services, because now you can go and listen to music from another country or just things in a different language, because you're not tied to a very limited budget. And we're seeing that in these reports, that how interesting that is. And on this regional Mexican music being seeing significant growth, it says Luminate offers snapshots of 3 specific genres that are seeing growth globally, including regional Mexican music, Afrobeats, and J-pop. Music Business Worldwide had previously written about this whole thing. And according to Luminate, U.S. on-demand audio streaming year-to-date of regional Mexican music was up 50% in the first half of the year versus the same period for 2022.
Yeah.
It's a big number.
That's a huge number. And I think my favorite part of our conversation with Jamie, and it's also, Murray points out in this article as the fifth point, is that 15% of the general population of the United States are what they call super fans. And that's going to lead us beautifully in a minute into Glenn Peoples' newsletter this week, The Ledger. He talks about super fans. But that super fan trend is so huge for this music industry. And so according to the report, 15% of the general population of the U.S., they're super fans. So what's super fan? According to the report, they spend 80% more on music each month versus the average U.S.-based music listener. And physical music buyers, vinyl, CD, cassettes, they're more than twice as likely, 128%, to be music superfans. So breaking down superfan activity by genre, Luminate reports that K-pop fans spend 75% more money on music per month than the average music listener. Afropop and Afrobeats fans, meanwhile, they spend 121% more money on music categories than the average US-based music listener. And you and I talked about this a little bit. Like, we're both super fans. There's certain artists that we're going to buy whatever they put out, whether it's a t-shirt, whether it's vinyl, whether it's a cassette, even if I don't have a cassette player anymore. We want to support our artists, and we want to show them and show our fandom by buying these physical things.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's jump over to Glenn's article. This is really interesting. It says in January, 3 months before Reservoir Media put rap group De La Soul's first 6 albums on streaming services for the first time, the company began taking pre-orders for reissues of classic albums like 3 Feet High and Rising and De La Soul is Dead, as well as De La Soul merchandise. The Rap Legends recordings came to Reservoir Media through its 2021 acquisition of Tommy Boy Music. And then they had a little bit of some issues, but then they got it together. So they quickly hashed out a deal with De La Soul to reintroduce the world to its Tommy Boy catalog. It also planned a big marketing campaign with the group to create exclusive merchandise and launch a slate of LPs, CDs, and cassettes.
So smart,
but here's
right?
And here's what's really interesting. Selling directly to De La Soul's biggest fans has meant 30% of its physical products sold worldwide has gone through the group's website, which is wearedelasoul.com, says Rel Lafargue, who's Reservoir Media's COO and president. In the process, Reservoir was able to tap into a consumer group of rising importance in today's music business, super fans. 20% of wearedelasoul.com customers are repeat customers in just the first 6 months of the store opening, he said, and we will see super fans fill their carts with multiple copies and color variants of vinyl, shirts, hoodies, and more at checkout. So they, the band or their distributor, is making a pile of money, again, tapping into this super fan network, and it's coming through their own website. And that's one of the things that Jamie mentioned to us when we were talking to him as well on the special episode, which is so much of this super fan activity is actually now happening on the band's own website.
Right.
And that's huge.
And as they put it, D2C, direct to consumer, D2C. They talk about that in the Luminate report, and Jamie called it out as something very important when we spoke to him. So De La Soul fans are part of a trend that's shaping the U.S. music business this year. Super fans purchases of CDs, LPs, and cassettes to help their favorite artist help drive increase in all physical formats, which we mentioned for the first 6 months of the year. I just think that it's so crucial today to tap into that super fan mentality because there's not a ton of revenue for a lot of artists in pure play streaming. But if you can get fans, especially if it's D2C, direct from your website, that's where you win.
Right. And yes, we did say cassettes, which still boggles my mind. But
It's a thing.
Fantastic. It's a thing. Absolutely. So great article. And of course, great piece by Glenn Peoples as well. And on to our second story from Hypebot. Predatory ticket resellers cost artists, confused fans millions, NITO study shows. And this is another interesting take on the entire ticket world.
Yeah, we haven't talked about this
crazy
very much. We've talked a lot about Ticketmaster, Live Nation, Taylor Swift, all sorts of issues and potential solutions for some of these problems. But this is one we haven't talked about a lot. Concert ticket resellers like StubHub, Vivid, SeatGeek, they earn tens of millions of dollars each year at the expense of fans, artists, and venues, according to a new study by the National Independent Talent Organization, or NITO. And I'd like to talk about some of those findings, but before we do, I had the privilege and the honor to talk to a couple of very smart people from NITO this last week. Frank Riley, who's the president. He's also founder of High Road. Nathaniel Morrow, who's a chairperson at NITO. He's also a booking agent. These are very experienced, smart guys. And they kind of walk through what this NITO study that was just released, they walk through what it all means. So let's take a listen to that conversation. Frank, Nathaniel, thank you so much for speaking with me today. You both belong to NITO, which is the National Independent Talent Organization. I recently read a great piece on Hypebot by Bruce Houghton with some rather shocking findings from a NITO study that just came out. Tell us a little bit about that study and some key findings.
So I guess to give a little background, NITO and its members have been worried about the ticketing world for a long time and how it affects their artists. NITO, for those that don't know, represents, agents and managers in the independent artist system. And so the ticketing world, it's been troublesome from the ticket fees perspective and from the secondary market perspective. People are buying up these massive amount of tickets to concerts and then reselling them at crazy profits. We know it's a problem. A lot of our agents know it's a problem. A lot of our managers know it's a problem. And all of our artists know it's a problem. And the reality is there's very little tools that we can do on our side to stop any of this. The tools are very cumbersome. The tools are, very labor intensive. And there's just a lot of stuff going on. And so what we kind of decided to do a few months ago was one of our members actually had access to one of these secondary ticketing platforms, that the brokers use to figure out pricing, all these things. And then you look at historical sales numbers, all that kind of stuff. And through that, we just decided to kind of, get a tally of willing participants amongst the agents and managers in NITO. And, we collected some data on shows that were selling on the secondary market. So we got the face value price and the capacity and all these things that we had access to this information, and then we tallied up all that kind of information that we had access to, and then we looked into the sales reports from the secondary market. What we got back was expected, but it was still probably beyond even what we were expecting. It's basically an average of twice as much on the secondary market on the resale sites. You're looking at an cumulative profit from these resellers about $41,000 per show. And you're looking at an average of about 540 tickets, I think it is, per show being sold on the secondary market. The crazy thing about this data too is, we had a highest gross profit that we saw from these resellers was about $340,000 on one show. It's pretty crazy stuff that's happening right now in the secondary market. And these people are just making these profits completely outside of the music ecosystem. None of the artists, none of the venues, none of the crew, no one's benefiting from this. People are just solely going in there, buying up tickets that they feel are undervalued and reselling them for a significant markup. And
the other complication is that several of the primary ticket sellers are actually participating in the secondary market. So it confuses the general public. It confuses the agents and managers, the people that actually live in this ecosystem. It's a really difficult and opaque system, and it's benefiting everybody but the artists.
Wow, that's crazy. What can be done about this?
I think there's a really easy solution. It's simple. Just put a limit on the amount of money that you can sell a primary ticket for, resell a primary ticket. If you take the profit motive out of the whole equation, the whole thing falls apart and disappears. Now, that's a lot easier said than done, because recently there was a show up in New England. It had 8,000 capacity. It was an opening show for a very, very, very large band on the first day of their tour. They sold 8,000 tickets. It was advertised really clearly that no tickets were transferable. You bought the ticket, you owned the ticket. There was no way that you could turn it to somebody else. Zero. It was on your phone. That was it. However, on the day of the show, the promoter informed the manager that there were 2,000 to 3,000 tickets sold through the secondary market. We can stop them from entering the venue. What do you want to do? And the manager caved and said, I'd rather have the 2,000 to 3,000 people in the venue than outside really upset. It's super complicated. Do you punish the public? Who do you punish in this situation? And how do you get this thing open? And how do you get it to change? It's baked into the system. That's the problem. It's part of the financial planning of venues and promoters, and there's almost no way out. And then there's the secondary sellers who are just parasiting off the whole system. So God knows, that's what we're working toward. We're trying to figure this out.
Yeah, one of the key points, NITO is a part of this Fix the Ticks coalition led by NEVA. One of the things that, is the baseline we're trying to do is just set the terms of resale. The artist and the venue get to do that. We get to set the terms of resale regardless. If you want to have open resale and you want to have your artist even participate in the secondary market, go for it. But if the artist says, absolutely not, I want to shut this down, any resale can be fined, then it should be. And I think that's the real key difference here is you just create a system where, if the terms and conditions are violated, there are hefty and heavy fines so much that no one can actually benefit and profit. And it has to be enforceable. But that's the legislation that we're hoping to write and hoping to get passed. We'll see what happens. We're obviously, compared to the secondary sellers, they have a lot of funding behind them. There's a lot of people profiting off this. I think the reality here is Vivid Seats, StubHub, SeatGeek, they charge the reseller and they charge the ticket buyer. They're getting a percentage on both. They have absolutely zero incentive to make that ticket cost less, and they're making a percentage based on how much it is sold for on both sides.
And Nathaniel, give them the cure numbers. Tell them what the difference is between when there's a guideline or guideposts on resale and when there is not. There are 3 states that have there's no limit on reselling your ticket. It's New York, Illinois, and Colorado.
Yeah, there's more than that. Those are the 3 that we found. Yeah. But I mean, the reality is the cure set the fan-to-fan face value resale restriction. You can't enforce that restriction in a lot of states. 3 of them that we looked at were New York, Colorado, and Illinois. But in California, you can set that restriction and it has to be followed. So the numbers we looked at for the cure for a Hollywood Bowl show, so we're talking that's like
14,000. Yeah.
14,000 tickets. There was 20 tickets sold on the secondary market that we found. For 2 shows at MSG, there was over 3,000 tickets sold on the secondary market in the cure show.
And tell them how much money was generated.
There was about $500,000, so about $500,000 was profited there. The crazier thing is there was about 1,800 tickets resold for the Chicago show, and about the same amount of money was profited in the Chicago show. So you're talking about an even crazier upsell on those tickets.
Because of smaller venues or whatever, yeah.
And the nuts thing about the Cure show too, I looked, Frank, there was like the numbers are really obscured because there was probably I think there was about 5 or 6 tickets sold for like $5,000 each.
Yeah.
And then like
Wait,
the rest,
can you imagine what those Taylor Swift tickets were? They were $9,000 and like up in the upper balcony somewhere on the day of the show. I mean, there's so much money generated outside the system. And, you look around and you're an artist and your audience shows up and pays $400 for a ticket that has a $40 face value. And people go, wow, the artist is gouging. No, the artist is getting totally ripped off. This is fraud. There's no other way to identify it. And it's been systemic through the system from the very beginning. This is known as artist exploitation. And it's not acceptable and it's got to stop, period.
Thank you for your time today. I really appreciate you guys coming on.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jay.
Thanks, Jay.
Wow. Very interesting.
I just haven't heard people talk about this so much. Now, we did hear a little bit about The Cure, and we did talk about that on this podcast, where there were some issues in these resale markets, and how much profit was made by these secondary ticket sellers. In Chicago, they made $500,000. In New York, they made $500,000. And I don't know what can be done with some of these things. And as you pointed out before we hit record, there's nothing nefarious about, like I can't go to the show this week and I'm going to sell my tickets. But some of the markup on some of these where they're being purchased for these secondary markets is shocking.
Mm-hmm. No, and tickets, of course, are already expensive. And if you're going to end up paying, as this one of the key findings is 203% of what that ticket face price is, then that hurts. That really hurts. And like you said, I'm not sure how to fix it, but boy, something sure needs fixing.
Yeah, maybe it's just having some transparency there, knowing what's happening here. Many of the tickets that were resold were for shows that weren't even sold out. And as they point out in the report, the average face value ticket price was $67.47, but the average resale price was $129.22 per ticket. But there were some that were going for 10, 20 times that.
Yeah. It said one ticket was resold for $1,014 when the average face value price was just $79.55. So, it's... Yeah, it is something that's got to be dealt with, and we will continue to kind of report on the situation in Ticketland. But there's just so many different things going on that make it just so confusing and yet also so urgent in terms of trying to kind of remedy the situation.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
We'll see where that goes.
Yeah, and the last thing I'll say on it really quickly is, first, thanks for the guys for coming on. But, while this organization, NITO, they're saying that ultimately they really want federal regulations that put more control in the hands of the artists. Some states are already doing that, and they point that out in this report. But it's something we haven't talked about a lot, and you're absolutely right. We'll be following it very closely as we go forward.
And good work from Bruce Houghton on that as well.
Yes.
And our last story, Jay, this is a really good one too. It's from Billboard. There's a free mobile app helping teens crash the Hot 100. Okay, and I know what you're thinking, but it's not TikTok. And that is where it gets interesting. But, it's we've been following the rise of this for a long time. And yowie, it's really getting exciting. And
well, you haven't called out what it is yet.
Yeah, exactly. No, because I want to kind of tease it. But it says BandLab. That's the app. There's 60 million plus registered users, have posted hundreds of millions of music videos on TikTok, and some are landing label deals. And wow, talk about new technology. He starts by saying Jacob Burns, who's the director of creative relations and content strategy for the music strategy and tactics team over at UMG, spends a good chunk of his day scrolling through TikTok. Last fall, he noticed a marked shift in the type of videos appearing on his For You page. It all turned into screen captures of people playing productions they made on BandLab, he said. Yeah.
Have you ever
So
seen
that's-
BandLab? It is absolutely amazing. You know, I had the pleasure of sitting down with their CEO, Meng Ru Kwok, when I was at South by Southwest. And for those that don't know, BandLab provides to 60 million plus registered users, nearly 40% of whom are women. And they provide music making software that includes an arsenal of virtual instruments, as well as the ability to automatically generate multi-part vocal harmonies, to record, sample, manipulate. It is an amazing platform that I really wish, you know, when you and I were starting out, you know, out of high school, playing in bands, it would have been so amazing to stand on the shoulders of giants. This platform is absolutely amazing at the high quality that you can do with just your phone.
Yeah, absolutely. So the free app launched back in 2016, but has become almost inescapable over the last 12 months. 200 million videos tagged with the hashtag BandLab appeared on TikTok in April. The music industry has taken note of the ease, I should say, with which users can make songs. Labels love BandLab because it allows artists to create music for very cheap, says one music attorney, and the velocity that some songs have picked up on the streaming platforms. There are random kids out there generating streams like crazy, says Nima Nasseri, VP of A&R Strategy at UMG. Their monthly listeners are going from 0 into the millions, and they're doing it from the palm of their hand.
Yeah, it's really a godsend for new developing artists. And it's also a community where you can share with each other, collaborate, and learn. It is a stunning platform. If you haven't tried out BandLab, make sure you go in there and take a look. But there was a quote from Jordan Weller, who's the head of artist and investor relations at IndieFi, right? That's a platform that helps independent acts find investors. And he said that it's like other segments of the music internet that explode. One artist broke, and now you're seeing a ton of them go. That's what makes it attractive for the community. Now all these other kids recognize they can build careers off of BandLab, and that's a potential pathway.
Yeah, and I haven't noticed what are the costs for BandLab? Do you recall?
It's a free platform, but there are things that you can purchase on the platform.
Right, exactly. So they were saying, I know you mentioned Meng Ru Kwok, is that how you pronounce?
Yeah, Meng Ru Kwok.
Yeah, right. Yeah, Kwok, sorry. Said he always hoped to have an artist chart with a song made on his platform, but the fact that it already happened last year with this artist, David, whose Romantic Homicide peaked at number 33 on the Billboard Hot 100, was ahead of schedule. He said, good on him, a little ahead of schedule. When he co-founded BandLab, he wanted to capitalize on the technological shift from a desktop ecosystem to a mobile one. Phones represented a musical instrument in everybody's pocket. He also aimed to open up audio tools to the large swath of the global population that couldn't afford iPhones, which came with another digital audio workstation, GarageBand. BandLab makes money by taking a cut for artist services like distribution and promotion.
Yeah.
And, so what a clever idea.
And not everybody has the same opinion about BandLab, but artists love BandLab, and they say it's remarkably frictionless to cut a vocal, to smear it with effects, or whip it up in a loop. It also has an artificial intelligence powered song starter. This is a function that can automatically generate musical ideas based on a few inputs. Though none of the artists who spoke for this story used that particular feature, BandLab is easier than GarageBand. Everything is in front of your face. So we're watching these new developing artists adapt to this platform that has functionality like some of these other things like GarageBand, but so much more. And it really makes it easy for them. I think one of the challenges in our era when we grew up recording was, man, you had to have an audio engineer. And it was Ampex 456 tape, and it was a recording studio. Man, you had to have an expert. And then some of these digital audio workstations have made it easier for people, but you still have to be fairly technically savvy to do these things. And this is one of those, like GarageBand was sort of a game changer because it made it so even knuckleheads like me could put things together and sounded, pretty professional. But BandLab just takes that to a whole nother level.
Well, they quote Mike Caron, who's the founder of the publisher and independent label APG and a producer. He says, the more convenient you can make something, the more it is going to be adapted. He said, I used to buy full recording studios for people, Pro Tools, interfaces, $20,000 packages of equipment. In contrast, BandLab is free and portable. I encourage my artists to use the platform as a way to get down spontaneous vocal ideas, he says. He thinks most artists still don't fully understand how many different tools are available within BandLab's suite of tech. Yeah. Meng says that 40% of users work with more than 2 core creation features, but he hopes to boost that number to 99%. So like all platforms or programs, a lot of people just kind of go in and find what they need, and they don't step out of those boxes. But it sounds like there's just a lot more tools on there, but again, making it easy to do, and it's on your handheld.
But you're right, that's true on every platform. I mean, how many people use Photoshop? You know, they use 2 or 3 different things to either edit
or Word
or crop
or Excel.
Exactly, right. So, but not everyone in the music industry is sold on BandLab yet. You know, one senior executive who requested anonymity, to speak frankly, he was impressed with the tech. He said that kids have never sounded this good at home, but so far, he continues, artists using BandLab haven't become recognizable stars. You know, Meng acknowledges there are doubters who think that this is a fad, but he's quick to offer a rebuttal. There are billions of people around the world who don't have access to music making on their mobile devices. But he says that, you know, we're just starting to scratch the surface. There's a lot more to come. And they have had songs chart, by the way, that were created on BandLab, but it's sort of in its infancy. But as we've been reporting for a while, I remember when it was like 30 million users and then 40 million users. Now it's like over 60 million people are using this platform, and they can easily manipulate and create art, create music. And I just think that's such a healthy thing.
No, absolutely. And again, we talk about the dramatic reduction in costs. So, you know, in our era as young people, I remember paying like $175 an hour to go into a recording studio, which, you know, at the time, the minimum wage was like $4 an hour. So that was a lot of money.
Oh, yeah.
And then when we see the development of a lot of these digital audio workstations, and now obviously, you know, GarageBand comes free on any Mac device or on any Apple device. But now we're talking, again, about a further reduction, and those tools are built in. It's essentially free. It's in a handheld device. And a lot of people I knew, even before BandLab came out, they would just go to you know, into their phone and just sing parts, you know, because they just thought of something, or they thought of a lyric, and they would just kind of type it in and just use the you know, the kind of the little basic recorder to record something, and then return back home and put it into their DAW and build on top of that. But here it is, all the tools are already in your handheld device. Yeah. It's remarkable.
It's a wonderful world.
Yes, it is. And on that note, Jay and I are going to wrap up episode 153. Yes, it is time to do that as we go out into the heat. I want to thank our sponsors, Music Business Association, Hypebot, and Bands in Town for doing the business. Jay and I certainly appreciate that. And of course, we appreciate you, the listener. We can't thank you enough for checking us out when you do. And it does not go unnoticed, nor does it go unappreciated. So thank you mucho. So on behalf of my good buddy, Jay Gilbert, wearing his Hogwarts tunic of being a professor, I say thanks, and we'll see you next time on the Your Morning Coffee podcast.
You've been listening to Your Morning Coffee, the weekly music news program for the new music business. Join Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart next time for the digital music news you need to know.